Okay, our final wine. Yannick Amirod is our wine grower. The estate is called Domaine Pavillon du Grand Clos, is the name of the estate, which all these names starts to get confusing. This particular wine is $30. It's a 2009. Let's talk a little bit about the vintage, since that seems to be of interest to people. 2009 was very warm and dry. It was considered to be an absolute almost a picture-perfect vintage in Chinon. Oh, I'm sorry. We're actually not in Chinon anymore. We migrated north. We migrated north of the Loire. The last two wines were from Chinon, which is south of the Loire. Now we migrated north. We migrated to Saint Nicolas de Bourgueil, which is this region over here. Bourgueil is here, and Saint Nicolas is a little region next to it. If you look at your little map I provided for you. Here's Amirod's vineyard, right here. This is the vineyard that we're tasting. Les Malgagnes. So that it's interesting that it's north. We only have one wine. It's the most westerly region that we're tasting today. Okay, vintage conditions, very warm and dry. It was hot in the spring. In the spring, young vines really suffer. There's no irrigation, obviously. So if you have really young vines or you've recently replanted and it's really hot, your young vines really suffer and your yields come down. This gentleman's vines are not particularly young. He's consolidated his estates in '77, so he's got some older vines. But for those that had younger vines, it was really tough. They got a bit of rain in September, followed by a dry, windy series of weeks for a perfect harvest. So this is pretty ideal. It's been compared to, it was the best vintage they had since '05. So this was considered the best vintage since '05, but the vintage itself was considered to be like 1990 in the way that it played out. The weather was like 1990. So the wines are characterized by really seductive red fruits and very supple tannins and supple flavors. So I'm curious to see if what I smell is actually repeated on the palate. So let's find out a little bit more about Monsieur Amirod. He became a winemaker at 22, so he's been a career winemaker, wine grower. He really was someone early to push for sustainable practices. He pushed very, very early for sustainability. Again, the idea of living raisonné for good reason. He works without chemical fertilizers. He uses a lot of canopy management and leaf thinning to get his wines really, really ripe. He really was a high level of ripeness in his wines. And he also uses, which is more common now with sustainability, but in-grow ground cover, like grass. And you'll find grass growing in between his vine rows, which helps soak up the nitrogen. And also, nitrogen is what's responsible for the greenness in the wine. So if you've got a wine grower who doesn't want his wines to be green or to show a lot of these overt green flavors, he has in-grow ground cover that helps soak up the nitrogen, which is responsible for those green flavors and aromas. Yields are moderate here, 44 hectoliters a hectare. The most interesting thing about the way he works his vines is that he makes multiple passes or multiple tries, meaning he doesn't go in and just make a picking decision and pick it all at once. He goes through the vineyard several times and he picks for optimal ripeness. So almost like they would do in Germany, where they would go through and pick for different levels of ripeness. This wine grower pursues that same kind of harvesting philosophy, and he makes several passes through his sites to get optimal ripeness. So his holdings in his estate straddle both Bourgogne and Saint Nicolas de Bourgueil. So he has holdings that are throughout this entire area. This just happens to be the one vineyard that we're tasting today. And his lightest wines, he has some gravelly alluvial soils, and he makes lighter wines, much like the first wine that we tasted, lighter in body, kind of medium minus body. He makes those wines as well. He also makes wines that come from very heavy clay soils. And those wines have some of the most structure. We didn't taste any of that style today. We didn't taste wines that were grown on specifically heavy clay soils, but they have the most structure. So if you like wines with a lot of structure and tannin, look for Cab Franc from Loire grown on clay. Specifically, look at the producer notes and say, wow, here's estates on clay. Let's try a clay wine and see if that has enough structure and tannin for us. But this, again, is considered from the Blanc terroir, the clay limestone terroirs. Limestone really being the holy grail here for these wine growers. It's their favorite soil to work in because the wines are longer lived. They have more life. So his winemaking style, he ferments in wood. He uses indigenous yeast, which means he doesn't inoculate or use yeast, and he doesn't filter his wines. So I don't know, in this red, it's a little hard to tell, but if there's sediment in the bottle, if anyone pours out a bottle, there could be sediment. He makes unfiltered wines. For me, that would just be another indicator of quality. Often filtering is going to strip out flavor and character out of the wines, and he doesn't want to do that. Well, in tasting this wine, I'm also getting, a very lean flavor profile. To me, these wines are like greyhounds. They're very, very lean. They have, if you were to use the analogy of a dog, I would say it's a greyhound. It's very, very lean. But there's a wonderful mid-palate on this wine that is a direct indicator of the ripeness and the style that this wine grower is after. And also the finish. I'm getting that mineral purity that I so look for and I so admire in these wines.